Hello and welcome to the Megacast by Actual Tech Media. Today's topic, building a next-gen IT environment. On the Megacast today, you'll hear from experts at Rubrik, Rapid7, Netapp, Outsystems, and welcome new presenter, Liquid. Thank you so much for joining us on the Megacast. We've got a great event lined up for you today. Before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know. First off, my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator. As always, here at Actual Tech Media, we want these events to be educational. We're all former IT professionals ourselves. We know how tough it can be out there in the world of enterprise IT to find solutions to your challenges. We know you have challenges. I had challenges when I was in IT. They just never seem to go away. And, we need to be constantly planning for the next generation of our IT environment. So that's what this event is all about. We encourage your questions there in the questions pane. I see many of you saying hello and good morning, good evening from across the United States and around the world. We appreciate those, but we also want to help solve your challenges. So if you're going through the event today, you see a presentation, you're wondering exactly how this might work with your applications, with your data in your environment, drop your question in there. We have a best question prize to help encourage those. I'll talk about that here more in just a moment. I'm also going to have some questions for you along the way, some poll questions, and we appreciate your participation in those. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet directly from your audience console using the Twitter icon. It's right there on the right-hand side of the audience console, and the hashtag for today's event, which is ATM Megacast, will be automatically appended when you tweet. I'll be following along over on Twitter to see if anyone mentions the Megacast. I'll be talking about the Megacast, and I'll comment or reply or retweet to any of those comments over on Twitter that you make through the widget there. So thank you in advance for socializing the Megacast and spreading the word to your fellow IT pros about what we're doing here at Actual Tech Media. We also have a number of handouts available for download there in your audience console. We've got links to ebooks, special trial resources, solution briefs, all sorts of great resources on today's topics, so make sure that you check those out in the Handouts tab. And then prizes. This is a Megacast. I like to say we have a mega lineup of prizes, and today is no different. On the event today, we're giving out 5 Surface Pro 7s. That's a lot of prizes. And if that wasn't enough, we've got Amazon $500 gift cards after each presentation on the event today. So, make sure that you stay tuned for these prize giveaways because they're going to be happening after every single presentation. I'll be announcing the prize winners live here on the event. And if that wasn't enough, we also have, as I mentioned, our best question prizes for additional Amazon $50 gift cards. These are for each of the 5 sessions on the Megacast today. Of course, you have to ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing and also meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions, which you can find there in your Handouts tab and also over at events.actualtechmedia.com. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media for tax purposes, and we will reach out to prize winners via email after the event. All prize winners have the option to make a donation to selected charities that you see here on the screen. Over the years, we've donated thousands of dollars to charities thanks to generous prize winners such as yourselves. When you win a prize, we'll say, hey, you want to donate this to charity? If you say yes, we'll help you pick one of the charities here on the screen. And of course, we all get, warm and fuzzies when we do that. And it's great to hear stories about, laptops and Surface Pros and things like that have been donated to charity to help those less fortunate. So thank you in advance if you choose to do that. As I mentioned, we want this to be a social event as well. The hashtag that will be automatically appended when you use that Twitter widget there is ATM Megacast. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter as well, and me, your moderator, David M. Davis. Also, check out our other links on the top right-hand side of your audience console. You'll find a link there to our YouTube channel where we post all of the recordings of our events. If you go subscribe to that, you'll get notifications about new events that are posted there. So make sure that you do that over on YouTube, of course, Facebook, and our 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes podcast store. And then we post all of our latest and greatest content really on LinkedIn. So make sure that you follow us there if you're going to pick just one of the many social media. Also, I want to encourage you to check out the link to Gorilla.guide, the Gorilla Guide Book Club there in your handouts tab. That's where you can download free, easy-to-read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. Yes, they are all free. Most of them cover next-generation IT solutions like you're learning about here on the Megacast. And then finally, I want to encourage you to refer your IT friends or coworkers to the Actual Tech Media online events. You could both win an Amazon $300 gift card. Those drawings are held monthly. You can do that right there at the link on the bottom of your screen if you just click on that URL, or at the end of the event, you'll be automatically redirected to the Refer a Friend page at actualtechmedia.com. And we encourage you to do that, and thank you in advance if you do. All right, now, before we get started, I want to talk briefly about today's topic and just kind of set the stage. I mean, you're here on the Megacast. The topic, of course, is building a next generation IT environment, and kind of the tagline that popped into my head for that is, to infinity and beyond, just like Buzz Lightyear. And, that was something he always said. He wanted to go to infinity and beyond. And when we think about our IT environments, that's really the goal that we almost have to set for ourselves. I mean, it's a high bar, right? To infinity and beyond. We have to scale to infinity. We have to secure to infinity. We have to offer application performance, to infinity. And I know maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, of course. It's not to infinity, but that's kind of the expectation, really, that our end users have of us. That's the expectation, in many cases, that our executives have of us. We can't be the department of no, if you will, that unfortunately too many IT departments have been accused of being. We have to be the department of yes and enable our company to go to infinity, or wherever that destination is for our company. And it really doesn't matter what type of organization you work for. I mean, when I use the word company, I'm talking at a high level. Here, you might work for a small home builder. You might work for a distribution company or a services company, no matter what type of organization you work for. Maybe it's a public school or a government or the fire department. No matter the organization, you need to be able to be prepared to enable next generation IT solutions and be that kind of department of yes. So to dig in a little bit deeper, why? Why is this so important? Well, of course, we need to plan for the future now, right? We can't wait for the future to pass us by. We need to be prepared to scale. You don't know exactly what applications or how much data you're going to need to support, next year or in the next 5 years. Of course, many of you do. You have some sort of estimations, but those are really just estimations. We need to be prepared for the unknown, the unexpected. As I said, we need to be a business enabler and help to take our company, our organization, no matter what it is, to the next level. We need to help create business agility. We need to be a competitive, we need to enable a competitive advantage for our company. I mean, if you think of companies, for example, like Uber, the ride-hailing service, technology is arguably their biggest competitive advantage. Without the Uber app and all the technology that goes behind that to connect the rider to the taxi driver, there's really not much competitive advantage left. In the end, without the technology, you just have taxis, right? So if you apply the same principles to our organization, no matter what you do, how can we use technology to create, tremendous competitive advantage in whatever it is that we do? We also need to be prepared to protect our company and its data. I mean, we're doing a huge ransomware summit in just 1 week from now. Ransomware, we tend to say, well, it's at its peak. But as I thought about that, we'll get to this peak of ransomware, and unfortunately, I'm afraid there's going to be higher and higher peaks after that. So it's at its peak of all time, but the peaks continue to get higher. And so we need to be more and more prepared to protect our company's data, to secure our network, and protect our end users from this just crippling threat that's plaguing companies and individuals. We also need to protect our job and our future. And by building the next generation IT environment and being prepared and planning, we will be doing that. I mean, if our company is shut down for weeks or months, for example, due to ransomware or some other unexpected threat, then it's not, looking very good for our paycheck and for our future. And finally, we need to be able to digitally transform before you can, before your competition digitally transforms and puts your company or your organization out of business. The pandemic forced many companies out there, many organizations to immediately take on that digital transformation that we should have been doing, for many years. And for many of us, it was painful. It hurt a lot of organizations because they simply weren't prepared. They hadn't been doing the digital transformation that they should have been doing in the past. So when it comes to looking for next generation IT solutions, like you'll learn about here on the Megacast, what should you look for? Well, of course, efficiency is the greatest, most important single trait, I would say, in a next generation IT solution. What can we use this technology for to make us more efficient, to do more with less, to enable us to scale, to the infinity and beyond, as we talked about, to make our company and our IT organization and us as individuals more agile, to better secure our company's data and our end users, to create high availability and resiliency should we have some sort of unexpected event, to give our applications and data the performance that they need and deserve, and to do it affordably, where it makes sense for our company and our organization. And then finally, to, ensure that we have the support that we need, because we can't do everything ourselves. We need the support of the vendor or the VAR or the technology company. Every solution has its own support organization and ecosystem behind that, and we need to take that into account when looking for next generation IT solutions. And this reminded me of, the famous Benjamin Franklin quote, "If you fail to plan, then you are planning to fail." So, we need to ensure that we are planning ahead for our next generation IT environment. And with that, I think, you're going to learn about some awesome solutions on the event today from Rubrik, Rapid7, Netapp, Outsystems, and Liquid that are going to help you to enable your next generation IT environment. Now, before I introduce you to our first presenter, I've got a quick poll question here for you. It's on the screen, and it says, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? With everything in mind that I just talked about, hopefully your time frame is a little bit shorter than it was before you came into this event. Hopefully I've helped to encourage you to take some action now rather than wait for later. But we're talking here about IT solutions on the event that you'll learn about, and simply what's your time frame. So if you haven't answered these polls, you just do it right there on the screen in the slides window. And I'll give everyone a moment here to respond and then hand it off to our first presenter on the Megacast. It's now time to introduce you to our first presenter. I'm excited to welcome Zach Palakia, Senior Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Zach, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Thanks, David. Again, my name is Zach Palakia. I'm a Senior Sales Engineer with Rubrik. I've got 10 years of experience in data protection and security. I was one of the first partners ever to deploy McAfee Move and a bunch of other solutions. So today we're going to be talking about a radically simple data protection platform that does more. So let's start by talking about today's data challenges. In a world of agile IT, we have multiple teams deploying multiple apps, servers, VMs, databases. There's no single user that's responsible for everything anymore. Now, the new buzzword in IT is zero trust. But as we ask customers, how do you know things are being protected? Customers tend to respond with, we trust our process. Process inevitably fails. If you look at ransomware attacks, in a lot of cases, you can point down to one user that didn't follow process correctly. And we can extend that type of automated protection into the cloud by backing up all your new workloads that are created in the cloud as well, de-risking your cloud and enabling you to accelerate your cloud journey. And then lastly, so we know your backups, your data is backed up, but what if someone forgets to install those cyber security tools as well? So at Rubrik, we don't just automate backup, but we also layer on behavioral analytics, encryption detection, sensitive data discovery, and DR orchestration all on one platform under a single pane of glass that's entirely agentless. So let's talk about what we call zero trust data management, which is Rubrik's platform. We start again with that automated driven policy where we are automatically protecting workloads and layering on security tools. But we also offer rapid recovery where we can shrink RTOs down to sub 1 minute and quickly recover multiple different types of workload. And then we wrap around that with a native immutability where we can stop data from being modified, deleted, encrypted by ransomware. So let's start with data automation. IT teams waste a lot of valuable time managing backups for hundreds of apps. They typically have to rerun backup jobs when they fail, clean up snapshots, do a lot of auditing. Unstructured data is super difficult to index and it becomes very hard to recover just single files that you need. And then too many applications go underprotected, kind of like what we were just talking about with the zero trust, right? And then recovery success is not guaranteed. It's also, with a lot of customers, very uncertain. And a lot of customers are also having unachievable RTOs in the process. With Rubrik, we have this concept of SLA automation. With legacy infrastructure, you see backup jobs and backup schedules. And usually those are used to help not only kick off backups, but also load balance so that you can make sure that you're not overutilizing your network or virtualization platform. Maybe your storage array gets overtaxed. And then we also set out backup windows so that you basically don't have impacts to production during the day. And with that, you also set up some exclusions, maybe to conserve room on space, and then typically some type of archive and cleanup policy. But not only are you doing more backup jobs and more schedules for load balancing capabilities, but on the left-hand side, you're also doing it for different data sources. With Rubrik, we set out to create a policy that could have all these different data sources inside one policy. And if you look on your right, on the left-hand side, you see the frequency of the backups, so your recover point objective. So if you want to do a backup every 4 hours, I simply put 4 hours, and then Rubrik will handle the rest of the scheduling. During those backups, we're also utilizing things like VMware APIs and NAS latency to figure out how much your production systems are in use, and then throttle off if we notice that they're in high use. And then in periods where they're less utilized, we actually speed up the backup process. So Rubrik really is designed for recovery first, though. We have a global metadata index, so it's easy to recover both files, VMs, or databases. We're optimized for recovery, so we're using flash-enabled disks in order to recover quickly. And that gives us near zero RTOs from a recovery perspective. And with Rubrik, it's all API first, so I can automate everything from monitoring through Splunk to service catalogs or ITOMs like ServiceNow, VRA, VRO, automation tools like Ansible, Puppet, SaltStack, etc. And we have a number of different use cases of API usage that we see customers use, including a customer that actually watches the wind speeds via Weather Channel APIs and orchestrates a DR failover when the wind speeds hit 80 miles an hour. And with that, we'll get into cloud acceleration. Why is data management so difficult in the public cloud? The answer is, with a lot of organizations, we see that they're using multiple providers, and within those providers, they're using multiple availability zones and regions to basically create security silos in their environment and help kind of mitigate risk by creating almost like a multi-tenant environment. And because of this, they need to have a tool per region and per availability zone. On top of that, each zone probably requires multiple tools for backup and recovery for things like VM protection, file set protection, and then maybe database. This creates a very difficult view of the environment and provides a lot of difficulty for compliance and auditing use cases. So Rubrik really set out to help simplify that and simplify your journey to the cloud as well. We started with Archive to the Cloud, simply taking long-term retention data and using the scale and cheapness of the cloud to store your data. And then once the data is landed there, we can actually use it as kind of a lift and shift to the cloud and facilitate cloud migration in a couple clicks. And then with native cloud protection, we solve a lot of the problems I talked about in the last section, where we're giving you a single pane of glass across all the database workloads and across all the availability zones and regions, with also the ability to restore across regions and availability zones in one single platform, in one single pane of glass. And with that, we also have Microsoft 365 protection for mailboxes, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. That is all automated. You can auto protect any new users that end up in your M365 subscription. So now let's talk about cyber resiliency. For a question every customer seems to be asking right now is my data safe? And most customers have a lot of perimeter defenses, north-south protection when it comes to network security and endpoint security and things of that nature. But bad guys are still getting in and they're still getting access to your data. So what Rubrik provides is a built-in cyber resilience natively. There's no extra tools, there's no setup costs, and bing, in the event of a ransomware attack, you can be assured that your data is secured at the point of data. So let's talk a little bit about today's threat analysis and what an attack actually looks like, or remediation looks like. Typically, the ransomware attackers get in, lock down your critical systems, and from there, you receive a ransomware note. You have two options at that point. Option one is pay the ransom. We're seeing a lot of customers go this route because they've invested in cybersecurity insurance, and it's just kind of, why not use what you've already paid into? But cybersecurity insurance is becoming harder and harder to get because the insurance agencies are realizing there's no money in it. They're paying out way more often than they're not. Option two is attempt to recover. And when you go that route, you have two teams you need to engage. These two teams typically don't work well together. They usually see each other as a hindrance, right? The SecOps team thinks IT is creating risk. IT thinks SecOps is slowing down their ability to be agile. So when an attack comes in, if the backups end up being compromised, again, you pay the ransom. The other situation is if you have safeguarded backups. And in that scenario, you also have two more questions to ask. What data do I actually have to recover from my secured backups? And how long will that take? And if the answers to those two questions aren't efficient enough, then again, you end up paying the ransom. Well, what to recover is a very difficult question because sometimes the SecOps teams have tools to say, hey, these are the 100,000 files that were infected. But when they hand it to the IT teams go, I don't know what to do with this. I can't restore one file at a time for 100,000 files. It would take me far too long. And it becomes super challenging as well. So what Rubrik set out to do is when you run into that situation, we're trying to enable cross collaboration between these teams. And we do that by providing a platform that has safeguarded against backups, the ability to quickly recover for the IT teams when they need to. But for the security teams, we're also giving them a scope of attack and doing sensitive data discovery to let them know out of the data that was encrypted that may have also been stolen or exfiltrated, was any of its sensitive data. And then with that, we're also providing the IT teams with one click recovery of just the affected files rather than basically deleting all your VMs and starting from scratch. This altogether gives you the ability to recover data quickly and recover from an attack quickly. So let's talk about some of the key principles of data protection just to kind of get a level set as well. These are very common in the industry. The first is air gap. If your backups are online and you have no air gap, essentially it's really easy for the bad guys to find that data and encrypt it. Now, the bad guys know if I can get access to your backup data, then you have no other choice than to pay the ransom. So having them online on an NFS or SMB target is the riskiest solution you could think of. The next is a logical air gap. In that scenario, the backup data is not on the network and it is hidden behind uncommon protocols or proprietary systems. And the last option is a physical air gap. And the best example I can tell you of that is tape. In the middle here, we also have immutability. It comes down to, as my data is written to disk, is that data, backup data, able to be edited, or is it immutable? So I can't edit it. It basically comes down to mutable and immutable. And in the third category, we have zero trust, with a traditional approach of trust but verify, and then zero trust is never trust and always verify. I think everybody can probably agree that these are probably the most secure ways to go in the event of attack for securing your backup infrastructure. So let's take a look at traditional architecture. First, your ransomware gets into your production systems, the payload's set up, and then what they do is they first go after your backup systems, because again, they know if I get your backups first, you have no choice but to recover. You can see I have multiple points of attack and they don't stop there. I can also go after your disk-based backup targets. And then finally, my attack ends with me going after your SAN and going after your production systems and production files. There is pretty much no security in this setup. And so this is where a lot of legacy architecture recommends having a physical air gap because they have no other choice. There's no other way to secure the data. But that is complex and expensive. So with zero trust architecture, the ransomware gets in, hits your production servers, goes after the Rubrik appliance and the storage array, but can't get into the Rubrik appliance because of our logical air gap and immutable file system. The way this works is we don't use SMB or NFS, which are the most common protocols out there. And because they're the most common to store backup data on, that's what attackers go after. We're doing this with proprietary API calls to access the file system, where we're using zero trust to make sure everything re-authenticates every single time to get to the file system. Now, if the bad guys can get through all of that, we still have a proprietary file system, which we built from the ground up. That's append only, which means there's no real delete function. It's all about creating patch files to track changes within the file system, an append only file system, meaning you can't manipulate it even if you're able to get to it. And so with all those layers, Rubrik is what we call a zero trust architecture. Now, in addition to that, Rubrik has some other layers. In addition to the immutable file system and encryption, both in flight and at rest, and the zero trust design, where you require TOTP or MFA by default, and it has to be set up. What problem this solves is a lot of attacks. We're seeing that the attackers get compromised passwords to log into the backup system, are changing retention times or changing the frequency of the backup so that no backups run, things of that nature. And so securing first the ability to log into the system is a great step to remediate those types of actions. Also, retention lock SLA. So if you're able to get through that TOTP, retention lock SLA makes it so that both internal bad actors administrators on the network. And if any hacker was able to get through TOTP into the Rubrik system, that retention lock will provide cohesive validated retention locks so that that data cannot be manipulated. The retention can't be changed. None of the SLAs can be reconfigured to change backup times. So you can see you have a very secure profile. And so to recap, we have a few problems with ransomware recovery. One, the bad guys are targeting the backup systems via open protocols. Two, it's hard to assess the blast radius. Three, it's hard to discover if there's sensitive data was affected. And four is recovery time being really slow and the SecOps and IT teams being disconnected. So Rubrik can help by, one, ensuring the backups can't be compromised and are available in the event of attack, detect anomalies and assess the impact, and give you one-click granular file level recoveries of just the impacted files. And then also look for sensitive data information to minimize risk in the event of a breach. So we actually had a customer, there's a YouTube video in the final link where Estee Lauder said, we had a lot of processes and policies in place that we thought were standard. We educated our end users to make sure that we had no sensitive data in risky areas. And when we looked at Sonar for Rubrik, we actually found out that we had PII data in areas where it shouldn't be, and we were able to remediate that. That not only helps in the event of attack, where maybe you can help secure data more harden data locations better so that the attackers can't compromise the data itself. But if you have had data stolen or exfiltrated, you can actually say with confidence whether that data had customer data in it or not. This will also help you with auditing capabilities for compliance and regulatory. And then with a lot of customers, they do this stuff manually. So it's going to have a lot of cost savings from a time perspective. The newest Gartner quadrant just came out, and Rubrik is again the leader in terms of vision and in the leaders quadrant overall. Highly recommend taking a read on the Gartner website to hear what they said about us. And for next steps, I have a lot of resources for you. You can get registered for a virtual demo. You can attend a Camp Rubrik where we do hands-on demos as well with a kind of classroom style approach. And then we have a savings assessment you can do as well. And there's links to all these, as well as some ebooks around ransomware recovery readiness, modern data protection for databases, and kind of the top 20 questions customers are asking about modernizing backup. And then, as I mentioned, Estee Lauder has a video talking about how they're able to find sensitive data where they didn't think it exists, even though they had process in place to protect against it. All right, in closing, there's just some commonly asked questions I want to hit on. One we get most often is what is the benefit of a logical air gap? Why wouldn't I want a physical air gap? The benefit of a logical air gap is that it's basically logically off the network, right? And there's no SMB or NFS protocols. So again, usually how attackers get in is looking on SMB and NFS shares for common backup file extensions and then going after them. So by taking it off the network and not giving that ability, it makes it so that you don't necessarily need a physical air gap. Now, on the flip side, for the physical air gap, there are scenarios where you might want them in some use cases, but they have as many caveats as they do is kind of as many cons as they have pros. So for instance, we have a customer today that uses a physical air gap, but they replicate into that physical air gap 12 hours a day, meaning the network is online for 12 hours out of 24 hours. Not very secure when you think of it that way. A lot of times behind that physical air gap, there's a Windows server, which again is typically the number one mode of ransomware kind of transport and distribution. And in those air-gapped environments, they're usually on the network. So the Windows machine is also not receiving Windows security updates and things of that nature. On the flip side of that, we also see that in the event of a ransomware attack, sometimes the attackers are blowing away storage arrays down to the ground, factory resetting them. They're destroying VMware environments, the ESX servers themselves, and they have nowhere to recover to. So what we've been doing with Rubrik a lot of times is having kind of a hybrid where we have customers that trust the logical air gap, and we utilize that for the backup data, but then also have a kind of a powered off bunch of storage and virtualization environment where they can use for kind of a clean room for recovery. Another one is we mentioned a lot of capabilities in today's webinar. How many of them are separate licenses or modules? You can kind of think of it this way. There's Rubrik for backup, and then there's the security suite, and then there's kind of DR orchestration. So those are really kind of our three packages that we have available to customers. What workloads do we protect is another good one. We're very good with databases, so SQL and Oracle. We excel with NAS protection, VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix. We have SAP. We can support a number of other different databases, pretty much name it, and we can kind of support it. Feel free to ask if there's any specifics you can think of. And then 5, I'm hearing zero trust more and more. Can you explain it again? What does it mean in the context of backup and recovery? So zero trust again is never trust anyone, right? Instead of kind of like a trust but verify, never trust anyone. Now that can be in the context of my storage, so never trust anybody trying to manipulate data. It can be in the context of anybody trying to log into the system, and it can be in the context of, hey, I don't trust my process, like we talked about with Estee Lauder. Let's learn how to trust but verify, right? Tell my users, hey, this is my policy, but I'm going to use my other tools like sensitive data discovery to make sure that people are actually following them. We had a customer, we have a lot of customers that use tools for 20% of their environment because they have policies that say all this data should be on this environment. We end up doing a POC, and we'll pick 3 machines at random, and almost every time we find sensitive data that they didn't think would exist on the 3 VMs they gave as an example. I think that's it. I appreciate the time, and with that, I'm going to pass it back to David.
Thanks so much, Zach. Really great presentation. I learned a lot about Rubrik, and I can see how this could help a lot of companies out there to better protect their data and build a next generation IT environment. I've just brought up a poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? And I'll leave this up here for a few moments, let everyone respond. We do have experts from Rubrik standing by to answer your questions electronically. We don't have time for a live Q&A session with Zach, but keep those questions coming, and we are routing them over to our Rubrik experts. So I'll leave up the poll here. Based on the number of questions, I can tell there's a lot of interest in Rubrik and questions around it. So feel free to respond there accordingly on the poll. I'll leave that up while I announce our first set of prize winners. We have a Microsoft Surface Pro. This is going out to James Malik from Texas. Congratulations to James Malik from Texas. And then our first Amazon $500 gift card. This is going to Justin Bennett from Minnesota. Congratulations, Justin Bennett and James Malik. Still a lot more grand prizes and gift cards to give out on the Megacast today. So stay tuned for those. I'll give everyone a moment here to respond to the poll while I respond to some of your questions. All right, thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll question. We do appreciate that. Congratulations, of course, to our prize winners. It's now time for our next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited now to bring in Devin Krugly, Practice Advisor for Vulnerability Risk Management at Rapid7. Devin, take it away.
Thanks for the introduction. Definitely appreciate the opportunity here to speak to the audience. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Under the kind of umbrella topic of building a next generation IT environment, a very important element, right, is the security of that environment, especially in today's ecosystem and complexity. I'll touch on that in just a minute. But as a matter of introduction, I'm Devin Krugly. I'm the VRM practice advisor here at Rapid7. I'm a practitioner by background, so not a product manager or a software engineer per se, but I spent most of my career in and around SOC and administrative positions, project management, I should say, for security tooling, and it's been a pleasant transition here with Rapid7, and I get serving as a VRM practice advisor, where I get to speak to clients as well as audience such as this. So happy to be here once again. Just a quick view at the agenda. Talk a little bit about digital transformation and how digital transformation is expanding the attack surface. I don't think that'll come as a surprise to anyone, but it's just context and background. For the second half of the discussion, we'll talk about vulnerability and risk management and recommendations around the life cycle of how security organizations can keep pace with this digital transformation that just about every organization is undergoing. So as mentioned, right, security teams are faced with increasing complexity to understand and mitigate cyber risks across really different asset types that are coming online as a result of transformation efforts and work to transform organizations to be more nimble, respond to customer and client needs in a way that they expect, whether that be on a mobile device or through a web application. Many organizations, including many of those on the phone today, are increasingly developing their own apps. Those applications come sometimes, frequently, with vulnerabilities and opportunities to be exploited. So that's an area that we see, certainly I see, as an expansion of the attack surface itself. And as you can see here on the slide, right, that includes cloud, containers which in the cloud. I mentioned here that Kubernetes is a management tool for containers. It's already 7 years old, and we're still running to catch up and maintain appropriate compliance and configuration of containers themselves. So it's not necessarily a new problem, but the problem is certainly growing and becoming increasingly complex, as you can see here. The biggest challenge with this expansion is that the teams, the underlying teams, whether they be the administrative teams for the technology itself, or the application, or cloud is certainly a good example of that, really sit in separate groups and sometimes have completely unique reporting structures. And that forces some complexity around communication about cyber risks, but it also sometimes forces or causes organizations, let's say but causes organizations to respond and manage those risks in different ways. And with that, obviously, there's a loss of efficiency, but there's also then some increasing challenges with executives and business leaders to prioritize one risk against the other and where to allocate finite resources, whether that be teams and personnel or investments in technology. When everything's a problem, nothing is prioritized, and it ends up being a lot of white noise. So one of the objectives with transforming your security function or security teams alongside digital transformation and the growth or expansion of the attack surface is, and it goes without saying, right, is to have some level of collaboration. Now that can come through reporting structure changes. It can also come through what many organizations have stood up, where they have security committees or security by committee. But the converged infrastructure is really a precursor to an increased complexity within the IT environment, but also, again, the expansion of the attack surface gives those looking to take advantage of that, more opportunity to monetize vulnerabilities or potential exploits, whether they be cloud misconfigurations, et cetera. And the pace at which the attackers and the opportunity grows, so does the need to change alongside or keep pace, as I mentioned before. So what do we do? Well, one topic that I'll touch on briefly is looking at converging some of the technology. Rapid7 has taken a platform approach. It continues to take a platform approach where we're putting many of the traditional kind of functional components that an organization uses to manage their security space together in a single platform, so that you're seeing things not necessarily through a single pane of glass. I know that's an old statement that's never really come to fruition, but does allow you to have a more uniform view of risks and helps bring that collaboration that I mentioned previously together. So there's certainly a move towards a platform approach within the greater security marketplace, and Rapid7 is working very hard and leading the way on that front. So if you're unfamiliar with the Rapid7 portfolio, definitely invite you to take a look. It's much broader than those who are familiar with Metasploit or our traditional on-prem VM solution Expose. It really is a pretty rich portfolio of services and offerings. Some of the additional investments that Rapid7 is making to help kind of drive the changes necessary in order to keep pace with the changing attack environment goes beyond technology. There's a pretty large bench, and we continue to attract new talent around technical expertise that can be delivered, as part of a program that's looking to introduce new technology, or just a traditional, consulting engagement, whether it be towards maturity or an assessment. But we have a pretty wide bench. I mean, the organization has grown dramatically, even in the time that I've been here. Another element that I think is unique to Rapid7 in this space is open source research and the community of contributors. Attacker KB allows us to provide intelligence around unique threats and what the pace of exploitation may be. As I mentioned earlier, Metasploit is another tool that's familiar to many that have been doing security for a while. We also have Project Sonar, I'll mention that later, that's looking at the external attack surface across the internet. But there's a variety of things that we're doing to not just enrich our product ecosystem, but the broader community, and much of that, as I mentioned, is open source. And then our ecosystem, I think, push to make sure our products and solutions are able to integrate with your existing stack is something that we work very diligently at. Not necessarily terribly unique to this organization, but it's something that we certainly recognize, and I know those that have been in the security space for some time are certainly dependent upon. So the second half of the discussion, as I mentioned, is really going to focus on vulnerability risk management. And in this context, I think just for definition purposes, or to kind of define what I mean when I say vulnerability, is really across the entire stack within your environments today. And the vulnerabilities can come in, to the traditional sense, which are CVE that have been submitted or found and identified. But they also can be, misconfigurations, as I mentioned earlier, in cloud environments. But it's really any opportunity to exploit the environment and gain a foothold that's not in compliance with your controls, or again, an opportunity for an attacker to monetize through ransomware, some other nefarious piece of malware. But the vulnerability definition here is really any exposure within your organization. So the life cycle of vulnerability management, I think, is an important element here. And so I'll kind of follow this particular life cycle, 4-phase life cycle, where we're looking to gain visibility. We're assessing the environment and identifying those exposures, or points of exploit, vulnerabilities, if you will. The prioritization exercise that many, again, are familiar with around remediating, which is the final phase, and whether remediation takes the form of a patch or a configuration update. Certainly mitigating controls can be applied. And of course, there's generally an exception process for things that may not be able to be patched or fixed, but that life cycle, just as a concept, for some organizations may be new. It may be implied and informal. I definitely encourage organizations to adopt their own life cycle here. Again, this is a 4-phase example. There's a 5-phase life cycle. I've seen even a 6-phase life cycle, but they should at least contain these primary elements and again, be adopted not just for purposes of, having a more rigor within the program, but also so that you're able to communicate to external stakeholders using, common references, common terms. And the last point I'll make here, as it relates to a life cycle, is making sure that you have some measurements in place. Security metrics is always a pretty rich topic, but measuring, and I'll just mention 2 here, the velocity which an organization is able to remediate, and again, that can take the form of a few things, but the velocity is, can equate to volume, how many patches an organization is able to deploy in a patch cycle, or how many configuration updates are able to be made. That should always be trending up. And the other one that's important here as well, and organizations I think sometimes struggle to quantify risk, but with the risk quantification through a tool like Rapid7's IBM solution, that trend, that volume of risk, if you will, or the quantification of risk should be trending down. The move to compare your organization to a benchmark is sometimes misleading. The inward look and following, or at least setting the objectives for those trends, as I mentioned, is a much more effective way to measure yourself and the effectiveness of your program. All right, so full visibility of the entire attack surface is, again, the kind of core concept of this presentation today. And as I've mentioned, right, the proliferation of the attack surface is certainly common now across many organizations. Rogue assets are continuing to pop up. I mean, that's a very common reference for nearly every company out there. And because of that, the management of the risk across those devices is increasingly requiring input from different stakeholders and different teams. There's a concept here that the external attack surface can be different or unique. I tend, and I can't necessarily say this is a common perspective, but I tend to look at the external attack surface as just part of the attack surface. I think it's difficult to manage and maintain some risk reduction when you're looking at 2 separate environments. They really are one. And the fact that so much of it now exists outside of a company's perimeter or firewall really is indicative that it needs to be managed as a single environment, if you will. So moving on, going backwards here. Moving on to some of the recommendations related to this life cycle. So we'll start with visibility, improving asset inventories. And while that's, I think, inherent and certainly something that security teams have long known and long been an advocate for, having an intention and conscious investment in improving asset inventories is fundamental, not just to a vulnerability management program, but to some of the other functions within a security team, including the detection and response function, or security operations or a SOC. The contribution of other technology within the environment should not be overlooked. It frequently is, and what I mean when I say that is as an example, a vulnerability management solution is constantly scanning networks, be it agent-based technology as Rapid7 and some of the other vendors have, or through external scanners and as well as internal scanners. But that in and of itself, right, can be a feed to improve asset inventories. We also, and I'll make reference to something I mentioned earlier, have an open source project known as Project Sonar that constantly is scanning the internet and associating those assets to organizations using DNS records and domain registrations. That information is we make that publicly available. There are other solutions and tools out there too, but a combination of things is needed to maintain that inventory. So a strong advocate for that in terms of maintaining visibility. The dynamic discovery of cloud and IoT devices is a necessity as well. That can come through existing technology, that can come through APIs within those cloud environments. But again, the intention for having a conscious, focused effort to do that as part of your vulnerability management program or just a security program, that has really become something that security teams, if you have capacity for it, need to kind of take on for themselves, or at least get plugged into cloud organizations or the cloud administrative groups within an organization to understand that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, right, the unknown and known assets, that is, I think, something that continues to challenge organizations, but really should be something that's communicated and kind of formalized as part of a program. It never ceases to be the case that organizations are always surprised when they go looking how many assets or connected devices or connections to SaaS products and cloud environments exist that security teams may not be aware of. Assessing, is the next phase in that life cycle. Using vulnerability checks, which most VM solutions, if you have one in place today, are able to do. The intent here is to look towards expanding those vulnerability checks to accommodate those other environments. Rapid7 is one of the solutions, our Insight VM product, as well as Nexpose is one of the solutions that has the ability to look at cloud environments as well as IoT environments through partnerships. So having that view and being able to manage vulnerability risk from a single team and from a single group that is driving the remediation is most effective. It also allows leadership to make decisions around investments in a more efficient manner. So look for technology and tools that have that capability. Shift left has become kind of a moniker of most development or organizations that have development teams, right? Moving security further up the SDLC or the development lifecycle. Looking at infrastructure and containers kind of goes back to comments I made around looking at cloud environments alongside traditional infrastructure. But we'll continue to see, I think, an acceleration, just expands there, and more dollars will be allocated to those environments. So it's natural for security tools to have a need to be able to look and assess and then obviously remediate as well. The other element here that sometimes goes without notice, I think it's a little more recognized today, but settings and configurations or hardening baselines have to be implemented and assessed and then remediated, and following a similar life cycle as traditional vulnerability management programs has proven to be very effective. So if that's not something you're doing today, I strongly advocate for it, not just in cloud, but also, again, with traditional host infrastructure, workstations, servers, and the like. Prioritizing against those assessment and assess reports is unfortunately, and I say unfortunately only because really we should remediate or have the capacity to remediate all risk, but that's just not the case. So having some method to prioritize that includes threat intelligence that has some level of business context, right? What are my most critical systems or crown jewels? And then again, the risk being quantified in such a way that, one, the remediation teams understand what should come first, but also so that leadership understands where the most risky areas or risky environments. One can imagine a scenario where the vulnerabilities that exist on hosts roll up to an application. That application then also has its inherent risk, but that score is looked at in totality, and the score of those applications can then be delivered to a business owner, so that you get the business leadership to support and drive changes that need to be made or investments, whether that be recompiling or reconstituting an application, or other technology, or at the maybe perfect scenario, additional resources, so that those things can be managed appropriately. But getting the business involved is really the point. And then the remediation exercise, is generally something that crosses borders, right? And you're looking at IT operations or cloud administration teams, but delivering remediation guidance, and that can be in the form of instructions on how to install a patch, but not leaving it up to those teams, being a supporting element. Also having some appreciation for their day job is an area where you can gain some trust and confidence. There always seems to be friction between security and IT operations. So taking some time to help, give them capacity and easing some of the work that's needed to deliver those risk reductions definitely will win some favor and make that process a lot easier. I'm also a strong advocate, I think, as many in the security space, to start an automation and orchestration journey, looking at tools to like Sonar to introduce workflows. And there is, I think, some hesitancy in automating, which sometimes equates to a perception that there's a loss of control. So getting started with some of the smaller elements, maybe a triage, or maybe it's the filtering and sorting of a particular report. But getting started somewhere is progress, and allows that adoption and that trust in automation to continue, and ultimately delivering some additional capacity to drive down risk. Finally, here I'll mention the concept which I think I referenced earlier, but accountability, right? And accountability being ultimately done at the business level is extremely important. So the reporting about risk, and that can be a culmination of vulnerabilities as well as configuration, but also potentially the areas or environments, IT environments, that see the most alerts or have the most incidents, right? Having a reporting solution or a methodology to provide that insight to executives and the boards is becoming increasingly requested, but also is an effective method to deliver some understanding and appreciation in a kind of common language, so that you can gain support and justification for investments and growing the team or introducing other technology. I'm also a strong advocate that a backlog of vulnerabilities versus BAU patching. So, whether it be Microsoft's monthly release of updates, but that BAU patching follow a different process, and not necessarily a different sequence of activities, but just an understanding that addressing backlog is a unique exercise or unique endeavor, if you will, than just the business as usual. Allows the measurement and the management of both of those buckets of vulnerabilities to have different SLAs and different goals, but mixing them is sometimes very difficult, and a lot of times they also need different resources and different involvement from teams. So organizing your vulnerability management program across those two buckets has been helpful for many. And then, finally, I think visualization, and I kind of touched on this at the start of the slide, but visualizing risk or quantifying risk through correlation of not just vulnerabilities and configurations, but application assessments and coding defects is increasingly becoming, I think, a cause and a solution to have that reporting capability kind of correlated or aggregated, so that, again, the investments required to address that risk can easily be communicated. So just another call to look towards solutions, and whether they be homegrown or something that you're looking to a vendor to provide, or a managed service provider to provide, but looking to correlate across the stack, the technology stack, but also across different teams is definitely effective, and again allows for I think discrete and consistent communication. It's always difficult to quantify risk, but looking to aggregate it and have some method to limit the number of requests coming from different security teams is definitely going to, I think, change the way organizations institute some accountability around IT risk, similar to any other business risk. So definitely appreciate everyone's time and interest today. The support email address there is available to you if you'd like to learn more. Also, obviously, you can visit rapid7.com. So I'll pause there and ask if any questions have come in we can address here at the close of the presentation.
Great presentation, Devin. Thank you so much. We do have a number of questions that have come in. We appreciate everyone's questions out there. I'm afraid we've run out of time, though, for our live Q&A session. We like to keep the Megacast here fast-paced and moving. So we are routing all these questions to Devin and the Rapid7 team electronically. So thank you so much for those. I've just brought up a poll question I want to point out to everyone. We encourage you to respond to. I'll leave that up while I announce our next set of prize winners on the Megacast today. So many great questions coming in here. I'm just routing all these to Devin and the Rapid7 team. So excellent questions. Thank you. All right. Our next set of prize winners, we have another Microsoft Surface. This one going to David Linger from Minnesota. Congratulations, David Linger from Minnesota. 2 Minnesota winners so far today. And then our next Amazon $500 gift card, this is going to Rich Wieland from Indiana. Congratulations, Rich Wieland from Indiana. And with that, it's now time to introduce you to our next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited now to bring on Mr. Jeff Dickey, Chief Technologist for Cloud and Data Services at Netapp. Jeff, great to have you on. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Dickey, and I've been at Netapp for just about 3 years, and I'm part of the Office of the CTO in our Public Cloud Service Division. So IDC says we're now entering the next phase of cloud adoption where enterprise applications are moving into cloud and IT organizations need to handle multi-layer applications and complex multi-cloud operations, as well as dynamic cloud-native applications on the same platform. And I'm going to talk about how we address this. Netapp is the leader in block and file storage per Gartner and IDC. And Netapp's focus on the cloud began early last decade when we partnered with AWS to help drive hybrid cloud services. Netapp is here to take the enterprise grade to enterprise great by helping you meet more cloud mandates for hybrid and cloud native workloads with a fully managed file service or a self-directed storage service, delivering the freedom to run Linux or Windows applications natively across the hybrid AWS cloud without redesigning your code, your processes, or your teams. AWS has helped customers migrate their workloads for about 13 years, and Netapp has partnered with AWS for the past decade. Netapp's partnership began in 2012 at reInvent, and along this journey, Netapp launched one of the first SaaS offerings on the AWS marketplace. Less than a year later, the ONTAP operating system was ported to AWS to provide customers the choice of on-prem, cloud, or both. And Netapp continues to invest in developing true hybrid and best-of-breed technology stack proven by recent acquisitions of Talon, which gives Netapp the remote office and remote and branch office consolidation to cloud capabilities, and the acquisition of CloudJumper, which is a cloud-only VDI solution. Netapp and AWS just recently announced a native, fully managed AWS service called FSx for Netapp ONTAP. Our partnership with AWS brings the customers flexible hybrid cloud storage solutions that help meet their business objectives in this changing technology world. Whether you're considering AWS to expand your data protection, extend application workloads to the cloud, optimize current AWS compute and storage, or simply meet a cloud mandate, Netapp helps accelerate innovation, time to market, and be the cloud on-ramp. We optimize resources for efficiency and business impact, and we establish clear visibility to easily manage the hybrid cloud. So where are we a good fit? We're used by many of the top 10 companies in every vertical, so we're going to be an ideal fit for your business. We're also going to be an ideal fit for every type of workload, whether it's SAP HANA, large databases, containers, custom applications, infrastructure as code, or even VDI. We've got you covered for high performance, massive data sets, and high availability with native cross-region replication. We provide the cloud-led data-centric services to global industry leaders across all industries and every workloads. I think you recognize a lot of the companies on this slide. But let's jump right into some happy customer testimonials before we dive into the nuts and bolts, how Netapp works under the covers. So Copa Airlines flies nearly 16 million passengers annually, and that's a lot of baggage to track. Each baggage transport data node must keep up with changing variables. So Copa was experiencing performance issues related to their baggage reconciliation system, which affected customer satisfaction, and they looked to cloud migration to resolve this and needed help with figuring out where they could optimize and how they could remedy this issue. So their solution was to migrate their Teradata warehouse efficiently to public cloud. So Copa Airlines, they uploaded 19 previously on-prem SQL databases to AWS with cloud volumes on tap, resulting in a 75% reduction in baggage delays and almost 90% success rate in arrival and departure punctuality. Sling is another customer that needed to reduce costs without sacrificing availability. They implemented spot solutions for ECS and EKS to automate just-in-time scaling based on real-time load. They were able to automatically balance a mix of EC2 compute resource types to meet performance and availability requirements and take advantage of EC2 spot instances. Gartner has made the point, going so far to state in a recent report, that cost optimization will drive cloud adoption. And we recently asked AWS customers about the challenges they face with workloads in the cloud. And what they told us confirmed what we already knew. Companies across all industries are leveraging cloud to drive business growth and innovation. But despite the fast cloud adoption, the most traditional enterprise applications still run on-prem. In order to migrate traditional applications to cloud, organizations need to modernize applications, acquire new knowledge, and update their policies. This makes your cloud journey really slow, expensive, and complex. But there's an opportunity here. You can get the freedom to run traditional and cloud-native applications anywhere and move them across the hybrid multi-cloud without redesigning your applications, either your processes or your teams. Harness the cloud advantages quicker and at lower cost, and get peace of mind knowing that your data is always available, secure, and compliant. Get cost savings up to 90% with automatic data tiering optimization by moving the cold data to object storage based on that data's usage patterns. Optimize infrastructure costs with guaranteed SLAs for durability and availability, and also choose performance levels that best suit the application requirements and adjust on the fly without having to move the data. No need to add storage admin headcounts as you leverage cloud with our fully managed services, providing cost-effective and super high performance scalable solutions. Workloads like machine learning or HPC, video rendering, financial simulations, they all depend on consistent, reliable, high-performance shared storage in the cloud. We offer a seamless data migration path for large data sets and databases from multiple sources into AWS with SnapMirror replication, and also for third-party storage devices with Netapp Cloud Sync. Use integrated snapshot copies to improve application availability with an easy replication for backups, DR, instant copies to simplify application test dev, accelerate that time to value, and reduce that TTM from months and weeks to hours and minutes. Every day, data migrations are started as companies move from on-prem applications to cloud-based storage and applications to keep pace with the world's economy. And Netapp is the analyst-proclaimed market leader of choice to serve enterprises and their most intensive workloads. Production level workloads require a highly resilient and performant tuned unified data experience across AWS from hybrid cloud to on-prem and even to AWS Outposts. We can even take your aging third-party data appliances from on-prem to AWS. When operating at enterprise scale, extra muscles are needed to cover further aspects of storage and data operations and optimize data services for the applications that are really running our business, like SAP, the big databases, and have that single place to share Linux and Windows clients to that persistent data storage, and a place for cloud native data volumes for containers, and get that persistent storage needed for Kubernetes. Cloud Volumes ONTAP is the leading storage software in AWS because it offers increased storage, high availability, and support for dual protocol of Linux and Windows. The data storage is independent from VMs, so no need to add compute resources for additional storage capacity. We have enhanced security with either customer managed encryption keys and encrypted volume policies. You also get ransomware protection and recovery and anti-malware integration with Netapp Cloud Insights. Through our unique machine learning algorithms, we can automatically detect malicious data access or anomalies and automatically create snapshots to object store using Worm with our SnapLock technology, so that the data and your VMDKs and anything that you have there are protected and are unable to be written to. This goes hand in hand with data protection and application availability. With auto scaling, there's no need to over provision storage resources. You only pay for what you need and get thin provisioning of your volumes in cloud. So as an example, if you provision 20 terabyte volume and you start writing to it, you're only going to pay for 500 gigabytes of actual persistent disk consumption. And we're going to run deduplication on top of those savings. With our space efficiency technologies, you're going to get the super efficient snapshots, and you only pay when you're writing that extra data to the snapshot. In addition, we're able to tier that cold data to object storage for even more savings. And multi-tenancy gives you that centralized governance over multiple workloads at multiple locations, including on-prem. And finally, with cross-zone and cross-region data replication, you have complete data mobility. With our SnapMirror technology, you're able to mirror your data to the cloud and then further replicate that data to multiple regions. And with this type of data replication, you can easily create disaster recovery solutions for simple and fast recovery options. When you add Netapp's Cloud Data Sense, you're able to quickly find personal identifiable information in your data volumes or snapshots. And you can also use Cloud Data Sense when backing up into Cloud Volumes ONTAP, so you can know exactly what type of data you're moving to the cloud. To better utilize resources with optimized performance and cost, a comprehensive monitoring service is required, and we have that covered with Netapp Cloud Insights, providing complete visibility into the platform's elements as well as the user applications themselves. Easily extend to the cloud, migrate workloads, and build these modern apps, all while eliminating management overhead with the integration of the complete Netapp portfolio. AWS customers can access everything that they're familiar with, the familiar AWS UI, and also with folks that are familiar with ONTAP already, they can access it from their on-prem via Cloud Manager. And through Cloud Manager, you have access to everything that's great about ONTAP, including that management, automation, and orchestration. Cloud Manager extends the limited AWS APIs to automate a broad set of FSx data operations like volume creation, replication, capacity management, and many more. Performance monitoring, right? Cloud Insights provides advanced performance monitoring, container and compute infrastructure optimization. With Spot Ocean, also supports FSx to provide end-to-end automated optimization or optimized container infrastructure. And for data protection, migration, and governance, use Cloud Sync and Cloud Data Sense allows you to scan and migrate data from FSx. Cloud Backup is also part of FSX, but and it's leveraging Netapp's block level incremental forever backups. Let's not forget caching for remote sites and edge. With FlexCache, you're able to accomplish remote site and edge caching, and with Global File Cache also offers a solution for FSX, and with SnapCenter you get support for everything that, if you're a Netapp customer that you're used to with SnapCenter and managing snapshots. And it can also serve as a primary storage for stateful Kubernetes applications running on Amazon EKS and Red Hat OpenShift and using Netapp's Astra Trident for dynamic storage provisioning of containers. Given the dataset sizes that must be protected now and in the future, traditional methodologies aren't sufficient anymore to do the job, and new approaches are needed to handle the demands of this massive data growth. And Netapp does data protection different, right? So we can detect user anomalies, identify end-user accounts that may be victims of ransomware, but before it grows, get that early detection. We have native F policy functionality and external UAB server integration, so we can block out accounts identified as a threat. We have storage performance monitoring, so you can set alerts for data growth and efficiency loss, or snapshot reserve to identify possible infections. And we integrate with leading virus protection softwares. We have file extension screening, so you can block files with known malicious file extensions, or even whitelist the just approved file extensions, and audit logging with intelligent F policy zero trust engine. We help with accelerated backups and DR. We help dramatically reduce the backup and DR window, 2 seconds, and provide APIs for complete automation. Reduce your protection burden and lower the backup server costs and improve the application performance. And we also minimize that network I/O with the incremental forever backups. You're going to get inline and in-place encryption. MFA and multi-tenancy will prevent unwanted access. I mentioned before, you get that worm for the data retention, and you're going to reduce risk with application consistent backups using SnapCenter, so that we can support that 3-2-1 protection approach. You're going to retain data efficiencies end to end from primary to secondary. Native data access enables data reuse for production workloads, and you're going to protect your data with object store and on-prem backups into cloud volumes on tap or object store, so you can have that concurrent backup and DR. We're also going to help you quickly recover files, directories, volumes in seconds, and also do single file restore. SnapLock is that worm data retention. That's going to be key to this massive amount of ransomware attacks we're experiencing and that are continuing to grow. And because we offer that cross-region replication, you're going to be able to fail an application into a secondary location in a different zone and be able to get up and running immediately. From the public cloud to the data center, full stack visibility of infrastructure and applications can end up being disjointed and downright unmanageable. And there's this need to identify performance issues faster and optimize usage so you can defer spend and do more with your limited budget and detect that ransomware attack before it's too late. And Netapp Cloud Insights is that SaaS-based monitoring tool that helps you quickly find performance problems and optimize usage of your cloud workloads. It's easy to be up and running fast, giving you real-time data visualization of availability, performance, and utilization of your entire IT infrastructure across clouds and on-prem. And part of Cloud Insights is Cloud Secure, and Cloud Secure takes a trust no one approach, right? It's going to inspect and analyze all data access activity in real time to detect malicious behaviors and identify any of those potential risks. It's what's detecting ransomware attacks before it's too late, so that you can minimize the impact of an attack with automatic data backups and automatic snapshots. And you can easily satisfy those audit reporting requirements, save time and money, and get that off your plate. And we collect data using a lightweight stateless data collector agent, which collects that user data from Active Directory and LDAP. So automation and cost optimization is one of the key components to cloud maturity. It's often thought of as the most essential part of maturity in cloud because you really never stop optimizing when using cloud. And so we know Netapp is the best solution for enterprise applications, but let's talk about cloud native applications. We have a host of SaaS-based services to meet your needs, whether you're just getting started with containerized applications and Kubernetes, or you've been running Kubernetes at scale for years. We help you build cloud infrastructure that automatically adapts to application needs. With Spot by Netapp, you can run Amazon EC2 Spot instances for your containers and microservices while saving up to 90% on cloud infrastructure costs that you currently have. Elastic Group is the product that started the company. It's what Spot is well known for. And think of Elastic Group as an auto-scaling group for managing those workloads that scale and on top of Spot instances. Containers and microservices are typically self-contained, fault-tolerant, and highly available, making them ideal for handling Spot instance interruptions, and with dramatic savings for containerized applications such as EKS workloads that are offered leveraging Spot. And Ocean by Spot is our super hot product right now, and that's what's specifically designed for containerized workloads and really any applications running on ECS or Kubernetes anywhere. It's basically Elastic Group for Kubernetes, and it's an org-wide dashboard for your Kubernetes environment. And you can think of Ocean as an intelligent autoscaler for Kubernetes workloads with incredibly efficient bin packing across Spot instances, saving you up to 95% of running Kubernetes yourself on top of on-demand resources. Cloud applications that run as stateful workloads typically require data and IP persistence. And with automated solutions, even in the event of a Spot instance replacement, your workload will immediately restart in the desired availability zone from the exact data point, maintaining root and data volumes, as well as private and public IPs. And the Spot portfolio also includes Eco for managing reserved instances and savings plan, Wave for managing and deploying and optimizing Spark. This is the best way to run and optimize your analytics engine for big data. And we have a new product coming out called Ocean CD, which solves the most painful aspects of the modern delivery release cycles. So it's going to give you that high confidence in deployment reliability. It eliminates overhead of release management and gives you that end-to-end visibility and management of your whole CD pipeline. So it's basically continuous delivery as a service and part of Ocean. And we tie this all together with Spot Storage. With Spot Storage, volumes are dynamically created and managed based on how the application is actually consuming them, not on pre-purchased units that we're all used to. This enables developers and operators to focus on SLOs without the need to think about storage. So we have you completely covered, from data-led migrations that require storage efficiencies, traditional data protection to keep pace with the scale of cloud and your growth in cloud, and complex hybrid IT environments require the real-time analytics and monitoring, which we cover you with Cloud Insights and with our whole portfolio, and automating and optimizing cloud infrastructure to deliver instant savings with our Spot products. You can test drive cloud volumes on tap with a free lifetime trial at netapp.com/AWS. And I want to thank you all for listening to the presentation here.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Jeff. That was fast-paced. I learned a lot, and I think this, just ties in perfectly with today's topic of building a next-gen IT environment. While we take some questions here from the audience, I'm just going to bring up a poll question for everyone out there, but don't forget about that test drive for Cloud Volumes on tap with a free lifetime trial at netapp.com/AWS. All right, I've just brought up the poll, and we appreciate your feedback here on the poll. A lot of great questions have come in. First one, I'll start with this one, Jeff. They're asking, I understand that Netapp acquired Spot a few years back, as you mentioned. Can you please explain how Spot works to manage and guarantee seamless move and provisioning of workloads running on AWS Spot instances?
Yeah, absolutely. So with Spot, they've got a lot of kind of proprietary software, and that's what really is kind of the secret sauce behind how Spot can take advantage of these Spot instances. So what happens with Spot instances, you're going to save, maybe 80% of on-demand instances, but they pull these Spot instances away with 2 minutes notice. So, they're traditionally not great for your traditional applications. But what we do really efficiently is manage the Spot market and figure out when things will get pulled or what we can pay for them so they don't get pulled. And many customers don't ever have their Spot instances pulled from them, so they can operate that. And if in the worst case scenario, if a Spot instance was pulled, we take care of bringing up everything the way it's supposed to be. But to extend that, Spot instances are incredibly, cost effective for containers and for big data type of workloads. So they really shine when you're putting cloud native applications on it, because they can withstand those types of outages, and we're able to as a SaaS service manage the auto scaling of those scalable web apps or the apps that run on Kubernetes. So we're going to take care of everything, take all of the scaling off of your plate so that you can just focus on delivering applications.
Very smart. I like that. Taking all that off your plate to just focus on what you do best. Another question here. Barbara's asking, can you recount a failure you experienced during planning or implementation that could serve as a lesson learned for users?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of cloud consulting in my past. I think one of the biggest issues that I've seen during migrations, and I'll talk about outages during migrations in that planning process, because these are outages that can be prevented. So I think one of the big lessons that I learned is back up to where you're going. You don't want to rely on backups that are on-prem when you're moving to cloud. So I think a great start is, using Cloud Insights to see where all these connection points between applications and data are. Start that monitoring, begin backing up to cloud in a different region than you're going, and then start your migration so that you can fail over and test those failovers first before that cutover. I've seen a lot of outages that could have been avoided with that. And those are not natural type disasters. Those are disasters that we can actually avoid.
Absolutely, yeah. Great tip. I love that. Question from Bill. He's asking, are there tools that can help to optimize services to save money available from Netapp?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things that we do. The big cost savings is when you're consolidating your data, like if you're doing some migrations into cloud, or you already have a big data footprint and you have many like rings of data, let's say in AWS on Elastic Block Storage. If you consolidate into Cloud Volumes, you're going to get all those data, the efficiencies that we provide, saving a ton of money. So the more data you're adding, the more dedupe you're getting, the more efficiencies you're getting, the more you're able to tier that storage to object store. And then on the compute side, you can use Cloud Analyzer from Spot to kind of look at where those potential savings are from your current spend in AWS. And you can look at that and find out immediately what can happen as far as getting either savings plans or leveraging spot instances. It will tell you where the best fit is and what you can do immediately without any types of downtime. You don't change anything that you're doing. It's just going to automate everything for you. So those changes are huge. Our customers that have been running Kubernetes for years in the cloud that start using Ocean save 95% of what they were doing. So we continue to see customers that leverage Ocean. They're starting to move applications faster into that cloud native containers so that they can get this 95% savings sooner.
Very nice. 95% savings. That's incredible. Next question here. How does Netapp detect behavioral anomalies?
And that's through our own. We have proprietary machine learning. We have our own algorithms that are going to be looking for these anomalies happening, right? So we're going to be watching and say, hey, normally this volume doesn't have someone downloading at 20 gigs at this time, sending alerts and taking immediate snapshots of that. So we're looking for things that are outside the norm. So and that's how we take advantage of our cloud insights monitoring, of putting together those correlations of everything that's happening in your environment. And it knows what is not normal because we're collecting that data and using machine learning on it.
Got it. Okay. Well, Jeff, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A session. We're going to have to wrap up, but there's a lot more electronic questions there for you in the queue. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks. Great presentation again. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to Netapp for supporting the Megacast today. Check out their In Your Audience console. There's a link to Amazon FSx for Netapp on tap, an ESG paper with a ton of statistics and useful info. Make sure that you check that out. Also, the link that Jeff recommended there was netapp.com/AWS. And I'll leave up the poll for everyone to answer while I announce our next set of prize winners. We have another Microsoft Surface Pro. This one's going out to Drew Plaster from Oregon, and another Amazon $500 gift card. This one to Ken Van Herky from Kansas. Congratulations. And with that, it's now time to move on to our next presentation on the Megacast. I'm excited now to introduce you to Tony Oliver, who is a Senior Manager for Solution Strategy at Outsystems. Tony, thanks for being on the event.
Hey, good morning. It's morning here. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and I want to talk to you today. I know it says building a next-gen IT environment, but you can't build a next-gen one if you still got some legacy systems around. So I want to talk today about legacy modernization, application modernization, and building for the future. So for most of the audience, I'm assuming you may have a little or some familiarity with Outsystems, and I want to give you a little bit of an overview because you may be new to most of you. Outsystems is a 20-year-old startup. We actually just celebrated our 20th anniversary on Friday. We started in Portugal. You wouldn't think Portugal is necessarily the center of low-code application development, but in fact, it's been quite a little tech hotbed for us. We're now a global company with offices around the world. Our overall mission, though, is to give every organization the power to innovate. For those of developers that are on the call or IT decision makers, you're probably in a situation that you don't have enough developers and you've got too much backlog. And our aim is to really help with that. We're not just an application development tool. We're a modern application platform, and there's three tenets that we built Outsystems on. First of all is that we allow you to and help you build your applications fast. We use a visual AI enhanced environment to develop your applications. I'll go into that a little bit more, but it allows you to very quickly essentially drag and drop like Lego blocks the application, build the application, both the front end, the back end, and the middle services that you need. We also allow you to build it right. so that you don't run out of gas in the application. There's a lot of what's called either no-code or low-code builders that they get to a certain point, and then you actually then have to go into a different development environment. We allowed you to build serious applications that allow you to scale from a few users to to several million. We've got customers that are using Outsystems to power their end user community, and we allow you to build for the future. We we scale. We are cloud-based. I'll talk a little bit more about the cloud infrastructure in a minute, but with every application that you build and develop, almost immediately you need to start doing maintenance and do change on it. And we are really built to be able to make the changes that you need and do the maintenance you need, and give you the information back that shows you the friction points and be able to move forward. So if we look at the Outsystems platform sort of piece by piece, I'm going to start talking about the full stack environment. So as I said, we're a full stack environment. We allow you to build the UI, but this is what's called Service Studio. You allow you to drag and drop both the entities, all the logic and the visual elements on there, so that you can very quickly stay within the environment to build out the app that you need. We also give you a full integration capability out of the box. We support things like SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, DB2, variety of things through a set of services. And as you can see there, I'm just dragging and drop an SAP connection directly onto the platform. We also support natively REST, SOAP APIs to build your apps out if you've got a homegrown system. We also support a variety of databases, and there is we have an open source repository called the Forge that we have that anybody can contribute to. So when you're building your apps and you need a particular integration or a particular a widget, chances are somebody's already built it and then made it available in the Forge. Again, the way we do things with the Forge is that any of those components can be supported by the community, and several of them are supported natively by Outsystems. We are also a full development lifecycle. We are a full CI/CD a DevOps environment, and we integrate with other CI/CD environments like Jenkins, for example. So we give you full dev, test, prod environment. We provide also all the metrics and analysis. So we tell you what's going on with your application while it's going on. So you don't have to sort of go to different other tools to be able to do that. We give you a lot of the monitoring that you need to be able to manage the full life cycle. And last but not least, we give you all the experiences. So you can build mobile apps, web apps. You can use it as an API service, other web services. You can build chatbots, and even building other kinds of apps that you may not have thought of a couple of years ago for something like Alexa or Siri. The interesting thing with Outsystems is that when you build an app in Outsystems, so I drag and drop and I build a theme and I build my application. It's very easy, essentially with a checkbox, if I want to turn that app mobile, if I want to make it into a progressive web app, or I want to actually make it into a native iOS or Android app. I don't need to have specialized resources to be able to do that. I can deliver those kind of capabilities out of the platform itself. So you may have heard about the idea of low-code development platforms. Gartner and Forrester track the environment. You can see if you sort of zoom up a little bit, we are in the top left-hand corner of Gartner's MQ, Enterprise Low-Code Application Platform rating. There is somewhere around 200 vendors that are saying that they're a low-code player. Gartner tracks about 17 of them, and we're in the top corner. Again, We're also on a multi-experience development platform that was called the mobile development platform. And again, we're the leaders. And if we go over to Forrester, both for mobile low-code and low-code for development platforms, again, we're in the leadership quadrant. So again, you may not have heard of us initially because of the, if you haven't really following this area, but the two of the most trusted analysts are tracking us very closely, and we've maintained our leadership for about 6 years in a row right now. Okay, so when you take a look at our customers that we've got around the world, the customers are solving challenges in a variety of areas. So we're looking at customer experience. So we've got a lot of our customers are using Outsystems to really power their whole B2C environment, whether it's a loyalty app or a mobile lending app or a mobile banking app or so on. We fit very well into that environment. Also, a lot of customers using Outsystems to drive their workplace innovation. We've got several customers using Outsystems. They built COVID-safe and sort of COVID-safe back-to-work apps very quickly within days or weeks. They've been able to create and deliver these kinds of apps. Several customers are using us for process automation, sitting in the middle of a business process to overall increase the speed, the efficiency, and allow them to update the changes as needed. But what I want to talk about today is really around the idea of application modernization, legacy modernization. And the interesting thing with app modernization is that you may have some systems in your environment. They might be AS400, might be COBOL, might be Lotus Notes, JD Edwards. There's a whole variety of applications. You may have some on-prem Java applications that, or Java WebSphere or .NET applications that you're going, okay, what do I do now? And kind of the choices, have been up to this point fairly limited. I can lift and shift to the cloud, so I can take my app, provision a set of VMs and move that up. But in most cases, my problem that I've got, my problem child with my legacy app is just now cloud enabled. I can rebuild it in traditional tools, but I'm not really solving the problem. I'm not really necessarily building I'm not really building it fast in most cases, and I'm not really building for the future. So we take a different approach with Outsystems. So we talk about the idea of a modernization approach, and the big piece with this approach is we're not forcing you to necessarily move your apps to the Outsystems platform. We can decouple from the past, but allow you to continue to deliver value from your legacy systems, and I'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. We also allow you to drive agility and build out a composable architecture using bits and pieces of your legacy system, and I'll give you a couple of examples on that. And then finally, when your application is you do need to get rid of it. You do need to sunset it. You need to build something for the cloud. We can allow you to rebuild the apps and your systems for the cloud quickly without the normal struggle and the set of skills. So a little bit about our our infrastructure. We natively run on the Outsystems cloud, and that is powered by AWS. So if you were to come up to me and say, I want to use Outsystems today, your applications would be provisioned on the AWS cloud. We manage that for you. If you say, I'm an Azure shop, I want to run on Azure. I'm a GCP shop, I want to run GCP. Or even if I want to run it locally in my own data center, we allow you to run that and give you those capabilities to run those apps in any environment that you want. But as I said, from a cloud point of view, you can modernize very quickly and really do that without the sort of normal tiers. But if you look at the kinds of systems, different systems need different approaches. So the first thing is that you go, look, my SAP system is running locally, and I don't really need to move it to the cloud, not yet. Maybe in the plans of going to S4HANA. All I really need to do is maybe deliver a new UI. I may need to deliver a new mobile app. I may need to extend that out to my customers, my partners. I don't want to do a wholesale migration. So in this case, we talk about extending the application. The second opportunity is what we're calling refactor. And what refactor is from a house building point of view is I'm just moving some walls around. I'm creating maybe a new room, but I'm not really changing the way this is. And this is essentially creating new apps using bits and pieces. I'm going to say turning into microservices from your legacy systems into taking advantage of that and building it in more of a composable architecture. And then finally, rebuilding. Rebuilding allows you to, my house, I need a new house. I can't renovate it any further. And Outsystems allow you to rebuild, but you can actually re-envision for the future as you're going through it. Now, I'm going to go into each one of these individually. So if we look at extending, extending is about really optimizing your business process. And that means, you've got an existing ERP, CRM, human capital management, or some external other kinds of application that may have a lot of technical debt. It may be risky technical debt. You don't necessarily want to change it at the application layer, but you do have API access. So with Outsystems, you can very quickly build new UIs. You can use Outsystems to aggregate data across those different systems. You may want to add some new logic and maybe some new user journey. So a couple of examples. We've got customers that have built mobile field services, mobile field service app, customer 360 app, and even a logistics dashboard by combining and extending these applications together. The second piece is if I want to refactor. Refactoring is about building new business processes out, sort of from the ashes of your old system. And that is using Outsystems as a microservices layer and building a composable environment to build these apps different than what you've got today. And again, I'll go through a couple of these examples. We've seen customers build, for example, mobile claim submission. Customers have built B2C portals and even mobile loan origination. Again, these core legacy systems didn't necessarily have that capability when they were first built, which might have been 10, 15, even 20 years ago. And again, Outsystems is able to refactor these, give you these capabilities without really disrupting the legacy system going on. And then finally, when you're at the end of the life cycle, you might be at the end of a supported environment. It may be not shipping anymore. Your skills have left the building. In some cases, some of these systems, the programs that you're running maybe have built by programmers that are either retired or dead, right? So in some case, in that case, you actually have to rebuild it. So for example, I'll give you an example. So Voltpack, it's a terminal, a terminal company. They moved from a J.D. Edwards system that was at the end of life, and they rebuilt their terminal system in Outsystems. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Schneider Electric took a look at their Lotus Notes inventory, and they decided, and they are having the same kinds of problems with developer skills and the ease of integration with the Lotus Notes platform. And they re-envisioned a lot of the applications they were using Notes for and built those within Outsystems. Mazda did a large legacy modernization. There's several .NET, Java, and some COBOL applications. And again, they've rebuilt those and re-envisioned them for building cars and trucks. And then finally, NIMBY is a logistics company, and they had a lot of Java and .NET applications, and they needed to do some updates. And they found that the amount of technical debt and the amount of skills that were required to do it, it was much easier to move to a more modern platform for them to be able to go forward. Now to go into just a couple deeper examples. So this is Axa Insurance, and Axa Insurance had and they still have an Oracle and .NET application for their claims and policies. And it worked fine, for several years, but they were running into a problem. Is that these policy and claims application was only available inside the company. So from an independent insurance broker, if I was an independent insurance broker and I wanted to take a look at a claim, I had to wait on the phone, wait for a call center, and wait for how many number of minutes to be able to do that. And they looked at do I change out the whole system? Do I move it to the cloud? Is there, what do I do? And in this case, in about a 3-month delivery time, they built a mobile and desktop portal that allowed their independent brokers to log in to their the existing claims and policies and do the work themselves, and that saved them about 50% less, 50% savings over using traditional development, and then they were built it so they can do maintenance and updates very quickly. If I take a look at Green Cargo, now Green Cargo is really interesting. So Green Cargo is essentially logistics and transport company in the Nordics. So they manage rail cars. If you go to Green Cargo site, it's all about moving sort of supply chain and moving railways around. The CIO was faced with a situation that he arrived a couple of years ago, and they were in the middle of a migration to SAP migration and a mainframe migration, and the existing IT department says, well, yeah, we're going to be doing a migration, and it's going to take us 4 years to do it. They'd actually customized SAP so deeply that it was almost unrecognizable. And if they had gone ahead with that migration, there would have been no innovation for 4 years. So what he decided to do and used Outsystems, and they built essentially an application layer that turned the ERP system and the mainframe logistics system into a set of microservices, and they started building new applications using the services from these two mainframes. They actually had two mainframes, not just one mainframe. And so, for an example, they built you can see here, it's a mobile claims mobile claims application for insurance purposes. So somebody that is on the yard and they find some damage on a railway train, or like a transport, losing my mind here, on the actual railway car, thank you. They normally what they'd have to do, they'd have to take a picture, they'd have to have they write it in a notebook, then they have to go back to the main area and then type that into both the ERP system and the logistics system to be able to start a insurance claim. And what they were able to do is, they were able to build it out with Outsystems, and they decreased the time and the cost to build this, and there are huge time savings to be able to do this. And they didn't have to touch the SAP system. They didn't have to touch the mainframe system. They were able to do an upgrade underneath. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about Voltpack. And Voltpack is again, a terminal logistics application. So they manage all the transportation when they bring in transport ships coming in from all points around the world. And they had an aging J.D. Edwards system built on top of Oracle, and there was basically a hit of end of life, and they were really faced with a kind of a fairly expensive and complex migration to a new version if they wanted to do a new version of a commercial off-the-shelf program. And they took a look at the timing, they took a look at the cost, and they started from scratch with Outsystems, and within a year, they delivered a worldwide system that gave them, essentially 24-hour insight into logistics on a full mobile platform. And if you think about, delivering, even if I was to start today and deliver a new commercial off-the-shelf program, it would take me a year anyway. So they really built to suit and built to function of this application with Outsystems. Now I think I'm just about out of time with my slides. The last thing I wanted to tell you to get started with this is that you can try Outsystems for free. So we allow you to start. You get a full access, full cloud instance, essentially for a individual programmer. You get Service Studio both on Windows or Mac, and allows you to test drive any of the apps that you've got. There's a lot of training for free that you can get going with it, and lots of information on our site to continue on. Okay, I think I'm about done. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Absolutely, yeah. We do have some questions for you, Tony. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about Outsystems? And so we'll leave that up while we take your questions. So let's see, Tony, a lot of good questions coming in. I like this one from Barbara, who's asking if you have any advice on getting buy-in from upper management for some of the types of projects that you discussed.
Yeah, it is, well, the best thing is customer evidence. So if you go to our case studies page within Outsystems, we've got hundreds of customer stories that are with a lot of data on the time savings. So what we have seen, however, is less resistance within the senior management and more resistance within the development, the different developers. And what we found is that, if you're a new developer, sort of a junior developer, you're usually more willing to try new tools because you want to show your value to the organization. And if you're an older developer, you're tired of doing more of the mundane tasks, and you're looking to maybe see if I can find a tool and a platform that I can do things faster. But we do see some resistance in more of the middle career developers, and that there's a lot of time that they spent learning the different frameworks, learning the different tools, and they may not be willing to give it up, at least initially. But just from a technical point of view, we actually generate real code. We generate C#, we generate SQL code, we generate HTML. So if you wanted, from a developer, if you want to get in and make changes and add code, you've got that kind of capability. But from upper management, we've got a lot of customer evidence on there to kind of help you make the case.
Very nice. Yeah, great advice. Let's see. Next question's from Eddie, who's asking, once the app is built, who owns the code?
You own the code. We're running it for you on platform, but it's your code. You also have the ability to take that code away. As you said, we generate we generate all the code for you and manage that. But if you let us manage the code for you, then you get all the access to all the analysis, the maintenance. We have something called architectural dashboard to help you really manage the tech debt within the code. So there's a lot of value for us managing the code, but it's your code. Nice.
Let's see. Another question here. They're asking, what about integrations? What integrations are available, and where can I view the list of what's out there?
There's two things. So if you do search for Outsystems Forge, that'll bring you to our Forge page that you can take a look at all the existing widgets and integrations that people have built. And so I think there's, they said, about 3,500 individual components that are there. We also just released something called Integration Builder in July, and that is supports. It's more of a wizard environment that supports SAP, Salesforce, Dynamics, SharePoint, and we're gradually moving more of the integrations over to that. But we traditionally support all the standard and also some of the not so standard applications as well. For example, MongoDB is a new integration, and there's several blog posts and videos on how to integrate Mongo with Outsystems.
Nice. Very nice. 3,500 integrations. That's amazing. Another question, what resources does Outsystems have to get applications up and running faster?
Well, there's a variety of things. So we have a very strong partner network and sort of MVP network. So if you want to, if you say, look, I need an app, I really like Outsystems, I need to deliver something very quickly. You can use one of our trusted partners, or we have a services group within Outsystems to be able to do that as well. We also work through a large number of GSIs like Deloitte for example, that we work very closely with them depending on your needs, that give a very high rate of success going through any of those partners.
Nice. And then, so I know we're running out of time here in our live Q&A, but I know you mentioned that folks can get started for free with Outsystems. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Sure. It's when you start up what we call the personal environment, you get a full Outsystems the Service Studio. You get a full IDE and allows you to create the app and run it it's essentially within your own personal VM that we manage all that for you. That's what people use to do training. They can take a look at that. They can test drive it. It's not a it's not a demo. It's not fake. It's a real application. And then if you wanted to decide you want to actually purchase that, then you can reach out to any of the sales reps, or we have a phone number you can call, and then we can get you connected either to a partner or to our account executive to help you move that forward.
Very nice. Yeah, it sounds super easy to do. Sounds like it could help a lot of companies out there, to modernize legacy applications or build new applications even. Tony, great presentation. Thank you so much for being on the Megacast today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And for more information on Outsystems, check out the handout tab as well. It's there that you'll find a resource you can download entitled How to Unlock the Power of Your Existing IT Systems. And as Tony said, also visit outsystems.com and you can try it out for yourself. So I'll leave up the poll question there for everyone to respond to who hasn't yet while I announce our next prize winners. We have another Amazon $500 gift card. This one going to Deepak Patnick from Virginia. Congratulations, Deepak Patnick from Virginia. And our next grand prize for a Microsoft Surface, this one going to Jonathan Verinder from Texas. Congratulations, Jonathan Verinder from Texas. Still another gift card and a grand prize to give out on the Megacast. So stay tuned for that, as well as another really cool presentation. Speaking of which, it's now my pleasure to bring in our next presenter. Excited to introduce a new sponsor, a new presenter on the event today. Welcome, Mr. George Wagner, Director of Product and Technical Marketing at Liquid. George, it's great to have you on the Megacast.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've been able to participate in one of these with you, so it's great to be here and excited to go through our technology and help folks understand kind of where it fits and capabilities and benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about Liquid. I know the audience is as well, so take it away.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. So thanks for your time, everyone. Hopefully I'll get us back on track from a time perspective. So as David said, my name is George Wagner, Director of Product Marketing and Technical Marketing here at Liquid. And today I'm going to really introduce you to something new. I imagine that most of you in the call today have never heard or have heard very little about a new technology, disruptive technology called composable disaggregated infrastructure. My plan today is to really help you understand it and the value around it to help accelerate and your time to value and flexibility for your infrastructure, whether it's at your core, the edge, your enterprise data center, et cetera. So with that, let's just dive into it. I always like to frame conversations, and I like to frame this conversation around software innovation. So prior to me moving over to the dark side of marketing, I actually was an IT guy at one point in time, a Novell engineer, Microsoft engineer, generalist, did all this stuff. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right about the time that VMware, GSX, and ultimately ESX came out. And since then, we've seen a deluge of fantastic software innovation that have unlocked a ton of potential around applications, whether it's for virtualization, desktops, we see containerization, infrastructure as a service, AI, ML, I mean, you name it. There's fantastic, there's a ton of software innovation out there. And if you look at this survey that was given by or done by ESG, they went out and asked 664 respondents, hey, in the next 12 to 18 months, where are you going to make your most significant investments around data center modernization? And of these 6 that are on here, starting with the 2nd through the 6th, right? On-premise hyperscale cloud solutions, deploying hyperconverged infrastructure, using containers and other modern applications, using software-defined data center, leveraging AIOps, which is artificial intelligence for IT operations. This is all fantastic software innovation, but it has to sit on top of hardware, right? The hardware itself. And kind of going back to what I know about infrastructure, servers, and systems, while we've seen a ton of advancements around capacity, cores, performance, the rise of GPUs to take care of parallelized applications, the hardware itself, the way we put it together, the way we acquire it, scale it, etc., has remained relatively unchanged in the last 20, 25 years. And that ultimately impacts the effectiveness of any software. And if you think about the way traditional infrastructure has been deployed, it's quite slow, especially with a lot of the supply chain issues we have today. It can take upwards of weeks to months to deploy a server. Often when you get that server, it's kind of confined by the box itself, by the sheet metal. So you can only add so many resources, so many devices, and the types of devices also are limited by the footprint itself, the form factor. And if you're able to scale it, it is a manual process. Deploying is a manual process, which takes time. Time is money. And because we tend to over-provision, because when you buy a server, it rarely changes. The configuration rarely changes after kind of that point of sale, that moment. We tend to over-provision. So when you over-provision and you don't use those resources, they become underutilized. I remember seeing numbers back from VMware years ago where they talked about the resource utilization of an unvirtualized server can be in the neighborhood of 12%. So none of the hardware stuff, the way we design, build, scale, deploy, purchase, etc., has changed from the server standpoint for years now. What I want to introduce you to is a new way, a software-defined way to deploy hardware, and that's a concept called, or technology called, composable disaggregated infrastructure, of which Liquid is a technology leader in. If you haven't heard about it, you're going to hear more about it soon. In fact, I just read a blog post today from Chris Evans around Project Capitola that VMware is doing right now around memory virtualization, so being able to take and pull memory. That requires CXL, PCIe, all these technologies that are burgeoning. And we're actually mentioned in that article because we're doing resource disaggregation and sharing, etc. So you may not be hearing a lot about it, but you will soon. In fact, I didn't know much about it until a year and a half ago when I joined the company. Bottom line, it's going to allow customers to accelerate their time to value. So stand up servers faster, scale faster, almost cloud-like in speeds. Increase the agility. So you can create servers that meet any workload requirements. Reducing costs as well. So maximizing resource utilization, obviously important. People talk about it, and we're able to deliver it. So what I want to do is introduce you to that, starting with having you suspend disbelief for a moment as I explain to you what the heck this even is. So imagine if you will, that you can take and disaggregate PCIe resources from a server, right? If you think about kind of one of the limiting factors of a host server is that you have your memory and your CPU and you have all of your resources in there, whether it be GPU or storage, but you can only have so many in a box, right? You can only have so many resources in a box. Well, what if that limitation was taken away? By taking and disaggregating resources away from the box, that's kind of step one in this process, right? So it's composable, disaggregated infrastructure. We start by disaggregating resources. So you end up with pools in expansion chassis, which I'll show you in a little bit, of storage, whether it's NVMe, it can be Optane to augment memory, for example, DRAM, accelerators such as GPU, FPGA, DPU. We take and disaggregate those from the servers or buy them new and add them into the boxes, and then we connect them over fabrics. Typically, it's PCIe fabrics. So for many people, the way that we think about PCIe is it's inside of the sheet metal, right? PCIe exists inside of the sheet metal, and I can only have so many slots, so I can only have so many resources. And what we've done is we've actually extended that PCIe fabric across a data center, for example, or across an edge deployment. And so all those resources are now interconnected. And the most important piece is the software itself. So we have software, composable software called Liquid Matrix, that we then take and orchestrate the creation of, let's say, bare metal servers, from scratch. So starting with a host with a certain amount of, cores, CPU cores, and memory, and then add resources like storage, GPU, networking to it to meet an app's exact requirement. Or on the flip side, for customers who have made recent investments in a server or blades, for example, but they have run out of space to scale for a particular project, you can use our software to compose resources, accelerator or storage resources into existing what we call kind of brownfield deployments. All right, so in a nutshell, it's a way to change the unit of compute from the server itself to the actual data center or the edge deployment or wherever it happens to be by using software. Right, so it's taking software and using it to compose these servers or these different systems for whatever purpose. I think the next question, because I imagine most of you on the call are engineers, is what are these elements, right? What are we actually talking about here? And so while I usually talk to this slide later in the presentation, I think it's probably incumbent on me to do that right now. So we have several pieces. While we're primarily a software company, much of the hardware today doesn't exist to enable this, to enable composability. So we've gone out and done the work, created PCIe fabric switching, GPU expansion chassis, etc. And the way it works is a customer will take and put an adapter card, a PCIe adapter card, whether it's a Gen 4 or even Gen 3, and in the future Gen 5 and CXL, and plug or connect it to a PCIe fabric switch. And then from there, they take their disorganized, disaggregated resources. For example, GPU. In this box, we can put 10 GPU or even 20 GPU, depending on the width. Connect those into the fabric. We can connect storage class memory into the fabric, as well as NVMe flash. Right. So many resources can be disaggregated. I only show a few of them here. Obviously, it could be, even possibly DPU, NICs, FPGAs, etc. If they're PCIe devices, there's a fantastic possibility we can work with them. From a host standpoint, this is important. As I mentioned, this is always talked about for composing brand new servers. These servers can be existing servers that you already have in your environments today, or they can be brand new, host servers. And because the resources aren't in the server themselves, a lot of these resources aren't residing in the servers. That allows for maybe a one-use server that could take the place of a two-use server. So less rack space consumption, less power consumption, right? As long as you have your CPU cores and your capacity of memory in there, and plug it into the matrix fabric, and then compose in the resources from there. And of course, last but not least, it's connecting in the matrix software. So the software itself exists on the fabric and is responsible for everything that happens, composing in resources, composing out resources. Right? It's just as important. When you're done using a resource, it can be moved out and placed back into a pool and made available for future deployments. Right? Versus many times when you purchase a server, as I mentioned, it's not configured much after point of sale. It ends up being a paperweight, or it ends up being used for another deployment, and it's a poor fit for the use case in mind. Maybe it's oversized or even undersized. So in our environments, we can take and move those around and move them back into pools and use them later, so maximizing that resource utilization. So just as an example, this is an example. It's a real example. We've done it before with quite a few customers. Is that this does give you the ability, as I mentioned, to address any workload. So if let's say that I did have a workload that required, maybe it's an AI workload, it's PyTorch, and I have a workload requirement of 2 CPU, 10 GPU, and 2 NVMe SSDs. Well, first off, 10 GPU aren't going to fit into a single server, so you're going to have to go out and buy a GPU box or find another method to connect them. In this environment, we can just take, go into our inventory, find a host server that matches the requirements that's in the matrix fabric, a host server that has the CPU cores and memory required, and then compose in the storage and compose in those 10 GPU. Oh, and by the way, I've composed it into a one-use server, all via software, right? So it's a real-time configuration versus having to go out and order all of the hardware, price it, configure it, ship it, debug it, plug it in. You've been able to stand one up here in just a matter of minutes. If I have, let's say that my resource needs change, right? So those 10 GPUs now become a 20 GPU requirement. We can just take, once again, go back to the software, open it up, and move those resources from the availability pool, from the available pool directly into, compose them directly into that server. Okay, so now we have a 20 GPU server, once again a one-use server running 20 GPUs. You can scale in any dimension in seconds. You can deconstruct it, reconstruct it. I don't want to use the word decompose versus compose because that just brings up visions I don't want, but we'll say it's reclaiming resources, right? So we reclaim those resources. So when I first learned this, I thought, oh man, this is this whole new paradigm. I'm never going to learn this. This is going to be difficult. It really isn't difficult. I think if you think about it, imagine if you could have extended the PCIe bus out of the server years ago, right? Or even use fabrics. So one of the solutions we have also is running NVMe over fabrics, so over Ethernet, for example. That's possible now, right? Bus speeds are fast enough, latency is low enough, throughput is high enough that we can make those dreams a reality. But it's all about the software. Now, in the next example, and this is pretty cool, is what if I have workload B, right? Workload B, I go ahead and stand that up, or maybe it's an existing server that I had that even predates my implementation of Liquid. Well, that workload has 4 GPU today. It actually has an 8 GPU requirement. Where am I going to grab those from? Well, I can either pull them from the free pool, or if I go and look at workload A, I see workload A no longer needs all the GPUs that I originally provisioned to it or composed to it. I can simply move those between the workloads. Physically, nothing is moved. New electrical connections have been made. The software has gone ahead and reconfigured that, and if I go into LSPCI and I check for my GPU, those GPU, in both of these examples, the GPU will show up in a Linux environment or Windows, but LSPCI is Linux. It'll show up as a local device. Right? So as far as the server is concerned, it has every single one of these devices installed inside of it, but I'm able to move them around. Furthermore, we have customers, we have a large production company that we work with in Southern California that has daytime and nighttime workloads where they needed 8 GPU total during the day and 8 GPU total at night. And instead of buying 16 GPU, they just took in and moved the GPU resources between their daytime workload, which is AI engineering, to the nighttime workload, which is rendering, right? Rendering animation, for example. And they move them back and forth every day. So, I mean, talk about maximizing resource utilization. Nothing is in there. There is no resources that is in these boxes, that are composed into these boxes, that don't belong there. And if they don't belong there, if there are that don't belong there, then they can be reclaimed back into the pool. It's as simple as that. And the next example I want to show you is around AI. Right? I talked about these new software innovations that are changing the world. AI is the top of the list. We can help compose servers that meet exact requirements for every stage of the workflow, from data ingest to inference. And one of the big challenges with AI is that you're dealing with a lot of data, right? Petabytes of data, and if you wanted to move that data over the network, that's very slow. I mean, I don't care what network you have, that's a very slow process. So imagine if you could just take and move those data pools by just composing them. Right? So we can actually do that and compose storage to each stage of the workflow over PCIe. And what's the benefit there? So if your primary objective with AI is to get results, to answer questions, then you absolutely want to accelerate the movement of data between each one of these stages in the workflow. And that's absolutely what you can with this dynamic resource allocation. So it's just kind of one more example of the flexibility that really enables. Of course, we do have a GUI. We have we have APIs, CLI. We do have northbound integration with tools like Slurm for HPC, which is amazing, because when Slurm and Liquid come together, what ends up happening is you end up getting a multiverse of options to compose servers that meet a job's exact requirements. So every possibility is loaded up into the database. Slurm manager goes out and says, okay, I need this server for this job, and it'll go and it'll find the resources it'll need. It'll compose it together, use it for the job, and then reclaim all those resources back into the pools. VMware integration. We recently announced VMware integration, so we do have a plugin inside of VMware. So if you imagine, VMware has been doing all the magic at the software level for years to optimize the underlying hardware resources. We provide that level of software configurability, scale, and efficiency at the hardware level, which can also be used in HCI. As I mentioned HCI as well earlier, that could also be used to create HCI instances. And finally, Ansible, which is obviously very important as well. There's something else. It's funny. I just introduce you to a technology, and then I tell you that, oh wait, what you've known about CDI is about to change forever, even though you've only known it for about 10 minutes now. Well, there are other CDI plays out there, other companies. We've been around, one of the longest lasting solutions out there, or I should say, one of the largest vendors out there that have been around the longest. And for every vendor out there, if you want to do true CDI, that means composing resources, especially over PCIe, GPU, for example, it requires the use of a switch, fabric switch to the external switch, and I showed that to you earlier. What we're launching now is a fabric integrated expansion chassis. So an expansion chassis that can hold 10 or 20, so 10 double width or 10 or 20 single width GPUs in a single enclosure, and then just allowing our customers to directly connect their host servers directly into the PCIe fabric and use Liquid Matrix to compose. So, single connection would be 8 gigs. If you need more throughput, you can get 16 gigs. If you need even more throughput, you can do 32 gigabytes per second throughput. So depending on the workload you're running, you may not need all of that, right? But it gives you some flexibility. And then beyond that, if you had multiple hosts to connect into this single box, each one could take an 8 gigabyte 8 gigabyte throughput connection in there, and it can be used to compose GPUs in any ratio. So maybe a server needs a GPU today but doesn't need one tomorrow. Maybe it needs 5 or 6 the day after tomorrow. Liquid Matrix software can be used to move those around, shift them around. It's very moldable, right? So you can move those around and remove them as needed via software without even touching a box in a matter of seconds. So, flexible ratios there, but this is the first fabric integrated GPU enclosure out there, so we're very excited about that. What does that buy you from a performance standpoint? So for our customers who are interested in deploying this around in AI ML environments, we are the benchmark holder for ResNet, Octane, and V-Ray. And this is with an RTX 8000. We do have some new numbers coming out with A100s and A10s, and we'll update that. But 20 GPUs connected to a single server with 15,814 images per second is pretty impressive, and doesn't take up a whole lot of space, to be honest. You can get 10 double wides in this box, 10 double wides in the bottom box. If you had single widths, you can do 20. So it's pretty impressive. It's different. It's a different way to think about things, but it's a new technology. I think you're going to hear a lot more about. I encourage you to reach out to us. When you look at kind of the benefits, as I mentioned early on, it's mostly around, as I mentioned, kind of accelerating time to value. So a lot of this is cloud-like benefits, but it's with a customer's own infrastructure, whether it's on-prem at the edge. And there are reasons to run this in different areas. We see a lot of opportunity and traction with customers and helping them in AI ML research, development in those areas. HPC is huge. So for the AI folks, being able to have the flexibility to create these massive supercomputers to go ahead and inference and run images through, that's huge. But also for HPC folks, being able to stand up and tear down environments without having to purchase proprietary hardware, etc. It makes it very easy for them. We see a lot of private cloud, on-prem, private cloud, and edge. We're seeing a lot more 5G edge, setting up infrastructures at remote areas. Time costs money. So if I had the infrastructure at the edge and didn't have to buy, I could throw 1U servers in there and smaller boxes with resources and just compose in storage, compose in GPU, NICs when needed remotely. That saves a lot of time and money. From a benefit standpoint, as I mentioned, it's just really around accelerating that time to value, so reducing deployment times instead of having to wait forever to a server to deploy it immediately or compose into an existing server in seconds. Dynamic configurations, right? They're really, we have customers who ask us, hey, can I do this many GPU in a server? Can I do 20 in a server? Can I do 15 in a server? The answer is yes. The most I know right now for a single server off the shelf that you can plug GPU, like an A100 in, for example, or even a Tesla. We'll start with Tesla. I think it's like 5. So it's not huge. You can get these specialized GPU servers where you can start stacking them inside, but they're all stuck in there, and you can't share them outside with a different server. So if you have that need to have some flexibility, this provides that. So agility, and then finally that cost reduction around improving resource utilization by only composing what's required for an application, and no more. Decoupling purchasing decisions too. Think about it this way. Every time that a new CPU comes out, you go out and buy a new server. What if you didn't have to do that? What if you could just buy, what if you just buy the server without all the guts inside of it? Just buy the server with the new CPU, plug it into the fabric, and then compose resources that were originally with the old server, with the older generation's CPU, and just compose them into the new one. There's no reason to go out and buy an entire server for the most part with all the resources into it when you can just buy the GPU when they come out you can buy the storage when it comes out, when the new technology comes out, and the CPUs when they come out. So it really provides a lot of flexibility in that regards. But with that, I'll open it up for Q&A. I'll bring up the Q&A right now and see what we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Great presentation, George. This is really kind of mind-blowing stuff. I'm sure we're all kind of trying to wrap our head around this, exciting solution that you all are offering there at Liquid. While we take questions from the audience, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there that just says, what additional information would you like about the Liquid solution? And so lots of good questions coming in. I think everyone has got to have a question about this.
Yeah. So let me go through them. Whenever you're ready, tell me to
go
fire
ahead,
away.
George. Which ones catch your eye?
Question came in, can composable disaggregated infrastructure technology take advantage of emerging technology like Intel Optane memory or other caching techniques? The answer is yes. So we, up until recently, Intel did have their IMDT drivers that are no more. Before that, we always had a solution with that. We can compose an Optane, use IMDT to do caching technology. We're now on the cusp of announcing new partnerships that will allow us to do that. It's a unique thing because even with so there'll be the opportunity to compose in memory. By memory, I mean not in the server, but external with CXL when that comes out with PCIe Gen 5. But absolutely, we can do that. Have been able to, and will continue. Let's see. The switch level. Let's see here. Does it require proprietary hardware, or can it run on our already deployed enterprise servers? So, yeah, the answer is it can run on either. It doesn't need proprietary servers. All it needs is an HBA. We don't have any host software, so there's nothing to run on the host itself. It's just essentially putting a PCIe HBA into a server and then connecting it to the switch, and basically that PCI adapter becomes an enumerated device in our fabric, right? Liquid Matrix finds it in there. So it can run on already deployed enterprise servers. In fact, it can even run on blades. Example of that is Dell's MX7000s. Those are fantastic, highly dense servers, but you can't put GPU in them. So we found a way to work with them to where we can remove a U.2 card, slap in a NVMe to PCIe adapter, and then plug it directly into the switch fabric and compose it into that. So yeah, we have an HCL on our website. You can look at it, and if a server is not on that, you can definitely reach out to us, and we'd happy to do that. How does one estimate the resources required to run workloads optimally on Liquid? So I would say it's a great question. One I haven't gotten before, and I'm excited to take a shot at it. The answer would be, if you've actually sized out a workload using traditional kind of legacy infrastructure, I would say sizing it for Liquid would be the same, right? Because you're still using the PCIe bus. It's a minimal, really non-detectable hop when it goes from switch to switch. So most workloads don't pick that up. But I would say for customers we're talking to, if they need 2 GPU for a server that's directly connected, they'll do 2 GPU in a Liquid composing from a Liquid enclosure with Matrix, and same with storage. So I think it's a good rule of thumb that it's fine. Yeah, list of hardware. Yeah, list of hardware supported. There are some minimal standards, absolutely. So does a server? We tend to go after servers that are widely adopted. So if there are servers out there that are the most widely ones, we tend to go after those first. Same with the GPU. If you go to our website and look under resources, on that page there's a button that says hardware compatibility list. You can download that and give that a shot. What is the TCO for deploying Liquid? Yeah, so that's a really good question. So it depends, right? But I would say the TCO can be measured in reduction in hardware costs, reduction in rack space, and also in operations costs, right? Not only capital but operations, right? We have an employee of ours who used to work at Rackspace, and that was what he was touting when he was there. Was that, hey, this is fantastic because normally to replace a GPU and a server, there's like 8 touch points involved. This is just one. But yeah, we have. If you reach out to us, yes. How do we calculate to talk to senior management? So I would say reach out to us. We can help you calculate that. We can work with you to see what you're doing today and help you come up with the right calculations to tell the right story. So let's absolutely do that.
Hey, George, I'm afraid we're starting to run out of time here in our live Q&A session.
All right, I'll answer the rest of them offline.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll route all these questions to you, but a really great presentation, and excited to have you back on the Megacast, and thanks for educating us on this awesome new solution from Liquid.
Thank you.
For more information on Liquid, of course, respond there to the poll question on the screen, and also check out the Handouts tab. It's there that you'll find a link to Liquid, and specifically to the Why Liquid page that has a lot of great resources to educate you on this new, really innovative solution that just goes in perfectly with building a next-gen IT environment, of course, the topic of today's Megacast. All right, so I will leave up the poll for everyone to respond to there while I announce our final prize winners. We have another Amazon $500 gift card, this one going to Mark Schmepp from Texas. Congratulations, Mark Schmepp from Texas. And our final grand prize for a Microsoft Surface Pro going to Thomas Newton from Massachusetts. Congratulations to all the prize winners. We'll also reach out to our best question prize winners as well after the Megacast today. Excellent. And thank you to everyone who responded there to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback. Don't forget about the 10 on Tech podcast over in the iTunes store. And if you are a potential sponsor of an upcoming Megacast or EcoCast event, reach out to us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I hope to see you on tomorrow's EcoCast on supporting, improving, and securing education and government IT and the cloud, where you'll learn from Progress, Rubric, and Synology. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us on today's Megacast on building a next-gen IT environment. I hope that you learned a lot, and have a great day. See you next time. Bye-bye.